as you say in your book, that this elder financial abuse is a crime that is severely underreported. How underreported is it?
Well, there are some studies from Adult Protective Services that only 1 in 44 cases is really ever disclosed or reported. And
Wow.
I think almost all of us, listeners or can think about something sometime in their lives where, an elder was being taken advantage of in one way or the other, and maybe that wasn't reported. So, and I had that personal experience. You asked about that. So, mine was a long time ago, but I did have that.
This happened in somebody in your family?
Yeah, it was my mother's aunt. She lived in San Francisco, and she had a caretaker, and this is back in the 80s, but nevertheless, she had a caretaker, and she had no children, so my mother and a few other nieces, but who were all close to her during her lifetime. But during the last 3 years of her life, her caretaker wouldn't let anyone come into the house, wouldn't let anyone talk to her on the telephone, and if letters were sent, would not put those letters through. And she made the aunt, who was in her 90s, so paranoid that no one could reach her. And in those days, law enforcement, both federal and state laws, were not at all helpful for this. Right. So anyway, I remember the day that the aunt died. I went down to San Francisco with my mother. The caretaker didn't want to let her in, and once we got in, the caretaker said she'd inherited the house and good part of everything else. She'd thrown everything, all the personal items, out in the garbage can. So that was a personal experience, and I thought I was a pretty hot lawyer then. Now I just know I'm an older lawyer, but back then I thought, I can pretty well handle anything, even though that was a tough case, and we didn't have the laws that favor people the way that they favor them today, or that help seniors.
Now, in your book, which, by the way, I'll repeat for the audience, is entitled The Wolf at the Door, Undue Influence and Elder Financial Abuse. In your introduction here, you say one of the most important elements in demonstrating or proving elder financial abuse is the existence of what the law calls undue influence. Now, you say there are 4 elements of it. What is undue influence?
Well, we all influence each other one way or the other, but undue influence is the excessive persuasion of another to do something or not do something which that person would have otherwise done. So the 4 elements of it are: you first look for the vulnerability of the elder, and it's not just capacity. Sometimes people think, well, it's only capacity. It's not at all. It can also be age or disease or grief, job loss, all kinds of things that would influence vulnerability. And the second element is that the person who's influencing knows of the vulnerability and has some kind of trusted position. And that could be a neighbor, it could be a child, it could be a caretaker. And the next elements are oftentimes some kind of secrecy or isolation that goes along with the influence. And finally, what's said to be an unequal result. And unequal is like, during a lifetime, a parent wanted to leave everything to their 5 children, but in the last 3 weeks, one of the child gets a hold of the parent and gets the parent to change and leave everything to that one child, which happens with frequency. But
now, of these 4 areas that you just named, which one of them has racked up the most abuse? Is it a caretaker? Is it a family heir? Is it a neighbor? Which one of these is worst?
Well, nationally, it's family members. I know, and it probably always disturbs all of us with families, but nevertheless, nationally it is. Now, caretakers are right up there, and there can be bad actors. There can be bad actors. There are attorney bad actors that have done things. And so, we've had some bad ones, but oftentimes children, and I'm generalizing a little, but I do so much of this and so involved in it. But if it's a child, it's often what I would call a dependent child, and that is a child that doesn't have a job, who doesn't have an income, who is living with mom or dad, and who probably has alcoholic or substance abuse problems. And I can, I figured out I probably get about 500 or 600 new calls every year from prospective clients. Now, I'm only taking a small percentage of those cases, but I can tell you a very significant number of cases do involve that setting.
So do these cases or these situations with family, do they start out, like maybe $400 or $500 here or there, or $1,000 here or there, however much, and gradually get bigger, or do they just go in for it all on the front end?
Well, Sharon, good point. I'd say it starts off smaller, and it kind of tracking things. Oftentimes with parent is the abuse of a credit card. So it could be the abuse of a credit card. People are going to Costco and buying for a parent, but ultimately it's buying for themselves. And we've had several cases where people go out and buy a Harley. Well, an 85-year-old woman doesn't have much use for a Harley, but maybe her 45-year-old son does.
No question.
And then they overuse of the ATM. So they're pulling out, maybe they're doing $50 in groceries, but $300 in cash. So yeah, it starts probably starts smaller, and then later on there's efforts to go for everything.
So because the vulnerability of the elder, or if you yourself are this person that I'm speaking about now, then you might be listening, this is not about being paranoid or, your dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever. This is straight up about people who are stealing from you that, can't wait for you to leave it to them. They want it now. Is that kind of what elder abuse is, financial abuse?
Yeah, that is what elder financial abuse is. And, there's cognitive impairment that goes with age, and, all the way from dementia, which symptoms all the way up to Alzheimer's. But, the best way to overcome it is to share information with loved ones and have some transparency to your estate and even your financial affairs. And people are sometimes very afraid to do that, but you kind of need to have someone who's looking out for you.
Yeah. So if your elderly parent, because some baby boomers, they still have their parents, they're probably either in a nursing home or close to it. Do they need to pull that person in closer, move them closer to them? Or, if it's, cut the caregiver out or cut the neighbor out or cut the selfish person out that, would, be the one to drive by and check on them and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, it's the art of the possible. And if they can be geographically close, that's great. Of course, that can't be for all families. In those situations, because I do have people calling, say, about California people but the kids live in New York. It's nice if they can they can have a vista to their accounts, securities, or bank accounts, so that you can watch that some. It's also important the parents should know that their estate planning documents should be shared with their children. Sometimes.
Now, what if you got a my mama was like this, and, she's gone home to talk show heaven, to be with Jesus.
Yeah.
So I can say this. But she told us it was none of our business. What, about her financials and stuff like that. I was like, and we had to argue with her. She didn't want to show us nothing. It was like,
I get it.
We were never in her eyes going to be old enough to view her stuff.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, no, it makes sense, and I get it, and I see plenty of people that way. And if you were with her, seeing me, I'd, try to tease her out of it a little bit. I'd also try to give her information. Look, this is really important because you never know. I mean, somebody could have a stroke, could not speak, and wouldn't even be able to say where's their will, where's their trust.
Yeah. Well, that didn't come until she got started going down.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, I want everybody to see everything. She laid it all out, everything. I was like, okay. But I guess people in their mortality, we'll probably all be the same way ourselves.
Well, that's tough, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You don't want to admit to it, but we all face it.
Everybody's got to go. Now, there's no dinosaurs. I talk about that on the show all the time. The name of our book this hour is The Wolf at the Door, Undue Influence and Elder Financial Abuse. If you have a question or a comment for my guest, and that is longtime attorney Michael Hackard. He is founder of the Hackard Law Firm in California and specializes in this area. If you have a question or comment or concern, get on the horn and give us a call right now. 615-329-8810, 615-329-8810. And as the baby boomer generation rapidly ages into retirement, elder financial abuse threatens to become a national epidemic. If not addressed early and aggressively, this unique form of exploitation can tear families apart, leaving shattered relationships and depleted bank accounts in the wake. So we're happy to have veteran California attorney Michael Hackard with us. He's author of the new book, and after 40 years of being in this practice, he has amassed a great deal of knowledge and information on this subject. If you have a question or comment, want to be in our discussion, the number is 615-329-8810. Many of you listening, where you yourself are sliding in that direction, so it's never too soon and early to cover yourself and take care of yourself as well as your elder loved ones. X, you have a question for Michael?
I do. I have one brother and two sisters, and so is it appropriate, or how do you start the conversation in asking your parents about their will, or just how do you have that conversation? I guess that's the best way at it.
Yeah, that's a good question, because we all kind of share the concern, because the parents can respond like, oh, they just want my money, they don't care about me, and or hey, it's none of your business, But really, the best way to do it is if you can have a family meeting, so that it's not just one person or one child, but all of the siblings if possible. If not, as many as you can, get together and just say it's important. We want to do the right thing for you, our parents. And that includes what is it that you really want done, and so you get different information, like what people want done for a funeral or for cremation or whatever those factors are. But are there any special things that you really have in mind, or in even things around the house? Sometimes people will think, well, I want that to go to my son or my grandson or whatever that is. So it's a good conversation. And it helps to have more together to express the love for the parents and appreciation, and just even saying stories. We don't want to be like, whoever it was down the street or across town or whatever, who got in a big fight, and it really was very horrible for their family.
Mm-hmm. It really is. There's nothing worse than this stuff, it just really is.
Yeah. That's a tough conversation to have.
Oh, it is.
The thought of having to figure out how to bring that up. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, it's a tough one.
Yeah, and especially if they're not thinking of their mortality. I'm probably bizarre off the rails, but after my father has been dead 20-something years. My mom passed a couple of years ago. I started talking more to my kids, so they know this is where this is. This is what Mama has. This is what Mama doesn't have. Okay.
Right.
So I want So we had this, and maybe it was because I was preparing. They were like emotional. One of them, and I'm like, everybody's gonna die. So I'm just telling you how I want this and that and this and that, because I don't want y'all mad. I don't want my children to fall out. Because my father used to say that to us, Michael. There are four. I have 3 siblings, 2 sisters and a brother. And he always wanted us to get along and to, try to love each other as much as possible. But as deaths have come and gone, and things have happened and stuff, it sometimes can be tough.
Oh yeah. It can be. But I mean, you did the right thing. It can be tough, but hey, this is our humanity. It's tough to talk about, dying, and it's certainly tough to talk to our loved ones about that. But these are good things in the sense of it's just helping to provide directions so that people won't be in arguments, or at least you do your best to stop that.
Yeah. Well, have you discovered in your years of practice that there might be people that have lived like a free willy lifestyle, and they've never, really had to worry because their spouse has passed on and left them, well off or to do or something like that. So they were able to just, enjoy their life and didn't plan for the day that they would die.
Yeah, sure. And we see that all the time. And so someone, in that case, someone passes away and their kids or brother or sisters, whoever it is, are scratching their heads and say, what do we do now? Is there a will? Is there a trust? How do I gather these assets together? And a common one you see is people said, well, they talk about, I have a gold collection. Well, you find out by the time you go through the house, other people have been through it, and there's no gold anywhere. Those are regular occurrences. But you have it right. Just do the best you can with showing your kids that you love them, and you're just trying to do what's right.
Yeah. I had to talk about my own family, but, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I can't talk about y'all's family because I don't know them.
Yeah.
My mom, and I wish she hadn't have done this, but she used to tell my oldest sibling that lives lived 50 miles away, that she had a box of money somewhere in the house, okay? And I'm like, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Because I knew my mom liked the casino. I'm like, if you had it, you just spend it. So when she passed, my sister actually thought I had the box of money. I was like, there is no box of money, child. I mean, she really probably to this day, 2 years later, probably thinks I got the box of money. But I got a couple of emails from some friends of mine who said the same thing happened in their family, that it was a chest or a jewelry box of gold and blues or something like that. So I guess this is pretty common where somebody in the family thinks that somebody has more than what they actually have.
Yeah. That is common, and it's funny too. There are people that have the boxes of money, or that I remember not long ago, a lady, very elderly lady, was hiding her money in the furniture and in the drapes and all of that. So whoever came in to sell her house later found all that money out throughout the house. So
okay,
yeah,
well,
but
my
yeah,
mom didn't do that.
So she had no box of money.
Not do that.
Well, and what I hear is like the box of money thing is a lot of the gold. Somebody saying, I got a lot of gold. And then, of course, they come in and there's no gold, or if there is, there's maybe a couple 1-ounce bars.
Or you discover that it's not really gold.
Yeah.
It's shiny.
Yeah. You could do that one too. Yeah.
This is worth something. I promise you it is. And then you go take it and they laugh at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you have in the very beginning starting in chapter 1 in page 20 and on, you identified financial exploitation and scams. Can you run some of these scams down for us on the air so we can watch for them? Because I think some of these I hear on the news here in Nashville on a regular basis.
Yeah, they're really tragic when they work, but some of the scams are like the lottery scam, or the equivalent of the lottery scam. Somebody calling on the telephone to a senior person saying, you won $1 million in the lottery, but you've got to put up $100,000 to pay the taxes for that. And the senior can feel like, oh, this is such a great deal. And they say, well, you shouldn't tell your relatives about it because they're going to want the money. So I've seen that one before, where I I recall one senior had come into me to see me after putting $300,000 up and something like that, and that is just so shameful. That again is a common scam. There are the scams just having to do with seniors and abuse by service people. I knew of one case that this older lady was paying her neighbor $300 a week to mow her lawn, and she thought that was a deal, and he was just doing it to take her money. So there are a lot of scams like that. In terms of priorities for things, but I don't know. I watch what parents, they need to watch these scams that come in on the telephone. That's a problem. There's telemarketing fraud.
That seems to be a big one right there, I think, with a lot of I've heard more than one story coming out of this region about these calls. And we cannot get that information said enough. Can you explain how that scam takes place, Michael?
Yeah, it's people, saying that they won something big. Maybe it's the Publishers Clearinghouse or any number of kind of things. It could be that, or there was a sweepstakes, or even their relative died. This long lost relative died, and so they've inherited all this money, but in order to recover the money, they have to pay taxes, or they have to pay transfer fees, or whatever it is. And secrecy goes with all of this. And so the money generally, whether it's $100,000, $20,000, or $300,000, is sent to the wrongdoer, and usually in such a way that it's very difficult to trace it and get to the wrongdoer. In the meantime, people may have given up their entire savings or their pension fund in order to get something which didn't really exist. And then people are just, I visualize the people I've met with on this type of thing, and they're just shattered. And their kids are shattered because their kids are feeling like, gee, I should have been able to protect mom or dad. And,
exactly.
And you can't always.
Right.
But you can. That's why I like getting this information out. It's my own little mission.
Absolutely.
And hopefully it helps some people. I was going to also tell you, Sharon, to the extent, if any of your listeners want the book for free, if they'll email me at hackard@hackardlaw.com, I will send them a free copy of the book. And I was recently on NPR, and I made that offer, and I had a lot of people from around the country that took me up on it. So if they want it, I'd love for them to have it.
Now, what's that email again?
It's Hackard, which is HACKARD, as in David, at hackardlaw.com.
Okay, and you can get The Wolf at the Door, because y'all need to read this stuff for real. Now, before you go, in Chapter 3, you address Alzheimer's and dementia and financial elder abuse. Can you tell us what that chapter is about, please?
Yeah. Dementia is so widespread now. There's over 5 million Americans that have it, and 2/3 of them are women. And, its prevalence, it doubles every 5 years after 65. So, and along with it, of course, is memory loss, short-term memory loss, as well as lack of judgment, with the impaired cognitive ability. And only a small percentage, there's a study that only 1 out of 3 1 out of 3 Alzheimer's cases is actually diagnosed. So there's a lot of people out there that have this problem. And, those that are the wolves can see, they see, there are a lot of lambs out there, and if those lambs can be taken advantage of. So I think people need to be very cautious. And I sometimes say it sounds a little strange, but we all look out for our children, and we don't think that much about it. We know we have to look out for them. They don't have that much judgment. Well, when people get older, we have to do the same thing.
Absolutely. Now, in the book, The Wolf at the Door, you also covered blended families, step parenting, deathbed transfers. I mean, you cover a lot of territory here that, people need to be aware of, because what ends up happening is, no one prepares for the unlikely passing of a loved one, but, and then they're unprepared, and then they're in freak-out mode because everything is, so you have time to do some preventive steps and protect your family and your loved ones by, number one, reading this book. But number two, there's you have to have some sense of what you actually have, don't you, in order to protect it.
Yeah, it is. It's good to know, what do you have, and certain things are set, passed by way of wills, but other things like IRAs and 401ks, pensions and even joint tenancy properties they don't pass by will. They're called non-probate transfers. So sometimes people have things saying joint tenancy that they really don't want in joint tenancy, or that they thought, well, all this, in fact, I just have that case. I thought this was going to be split in front between the 4 kids, but because in joint tenancy, it's a different issue. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. Now, Michael, again, give that email address for people that want a copy of your book. They can email you directly, and you're going to send it to them.
They're going to get a free copy of the book, and I pay for the postage. It's Hackard, so HACKARD, at hackardlaw.com.
Excellent. Michael, thank you so much. This has been very valuable information. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope that the listeners of the show follow up on this and send you the email. And, of course, heed the steps and points that you make in the book to protect their elders and protect themselves, as a matter of fact. And I thank you so very much for the work that you do, okay?
Well, I thank you for the work that you do in spreading this kind of information out. Thank you.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Michael, you have a wonderful rest of the day, okay?
Yes, and you too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.